All right, we are live on YouTube.
I think we need Scott Campbell. Here.
Oh, we do.
No, but if they had a little.
So
you looked at
All right, we are live. Welcome everybody. It's Thursday, May 1, and we are House Energy and Digital Infrastructure. I'm Rep. Kathleen James from Manchester.
Richard Bailey, Lamoille 2.
Chris Morrow, Wyndham, Windsor, Bennington.
Michael Southworth, Caledonia 2.
Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Dara Torrey, Washington 2.
Graham Kleppner, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
Laura Sibilia, Wyndham 2.
Scott Campbell, representative from St. Johnsbury.
Jack Locker, Committee Assistant.
All righty, and our honored guest. You're good. All right, for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and Committee. My name is Sarah Meerhoff. I am the Director of Advocacy and Communications for the Associated General Contractors of Vermont. We represent more than 200 folks in the building trades, the construction industry throughout the state. So we represent construction companies who work on highway and transportation infrastructure, as well as what I'm here more so to talk about today, which is building infrastructure. We call it vertical, both commercial building as well as home and residential construction, mixed use, multifamily units, single family units, really the whole gamut. We have a lot of diversity within our membership of the buildings that our members build. And so I'm here to talk about H 181. And my comments are pretty brief for today. First and foremost, I want to commend the work of this body and just generally everyone in this building really being very, I would say, deliberate with the questions of building energy codes and taking the time that I think it requires to consider this question. AGC has had a seat at the table with the working group, and we would very much love to remain in the working group and continuing to work on this topic, particularly because we have so much diversity in our membership. And so we can really offer the perspective of folks building, like I said, single family homes, multi-family unit buildings and whatnot. The other piece of H 181 that I wanted to talk about today was the final section as it relates to the contractor registry. And I know that you've heard from the Office of Professional Regulation and Secretary of State's office about this. And my understanding of the intent of the original legislation, as was passed a couple of sessions ago, establishing the registry, and then the consideration of this, the ask from OPR this session with lowering that kind of threshold from $10,000 worth of work to $2,000. I know that the intention is to mitigate any concerns or, the realities of instances of contractor fraud or bad actors or things like that, which is a very laudable goal. And I think we should be rightfully concerned about that. If we continue this conversation, say into next year, I would just like to put it out there that we'd really like to be a part of that and to really consider the ramifications of lowering that threshold. And I hope we'd be really intentional with the number that we set. $2,000 at this point, particularly including building costs, with the trends that we are seeing in materials costs, that's not going to get you very much, frankly. Those are really small jobs. And what I really don't want to have happen, say, is imposing registration requirements on folks, gig workers, perhaps, say the retired contractor who retiles his family member's bathroom just for some side money to help pay his oil bill in the winter, maybe a college student painting some living rooms over the summer to pay for his first car, something like that. I don't want to impose restrictions on folks that are difficult for them to meet. And so if we continue this conversation, I hope we can be intentional in setting that number and where we think it is most equitable, and perhaps right size, those kind of registration requirements. And I think there's some recognition of that already in the bill as it's written. I noticed that, it does lower the threshold for registering, but say it does not lower the threshold from 10 to 2000 for the insurance requirements. So I think there's already some recognition that, say carrying an expensive insurance plan for someone painting living rooms, for instance, is kind of a high bar to clear for someone, like I said, trying to supplement their income. So that's namely it, but I'm happy to take your questions.
Representative Campbell, do you have any?
Well, I think it's an interesting idea to talk about specific trades. We didn't talk about that in the working group this past year. Sarah, would you be who would be participating in the working group? Is that something you would be doing, or would Richard Wabi be doing that again?
I think that would be up to you all.
Well, Richard is actually listed as the member, but he may have a designee. That's all.
Right. And so if we decide to opt to change that person, then we'd be open to that. But I know that I don't want to speak for Richard, but I think I can on this one that he's happy to stay on the working group.
Anyway, I think it's an interesting idea to come up with a list of specific trades. When we passed the builder registry several years ago, we sort of left it up to the Office of Professional Regulation to do that. But this might be actually something that's worth the working group considering, because as you say, for example, painting or tiling or things like that don't really affect the energy dynamics or moisture dynamics in a building typically. So maybe those trades should be excluded from the or maybe not. It's just a thought.
And if I may, Madam Chair, in addition to the question of specific trades, also dollar amount as well, I think is really what I'm kind of getting at. Say, especially if we're considering lowering the registration requirement down to $2,000, because that can be, say painting a house, for instance. That is a different question of, say, insurance liability, that there really isn't a huge insurance risk to painting as opposed to, say, plumbing. There can be a question of insurance and liability there. So I think the dollar amount is also, I would just like to consider the question some more and really think about the impacts that it could have on folks, again, gig type workers or folks, trying to make an extra buck. And I'd also like to understand, frankly, more so where the $2,000 number came from in terms of, the origin of that number, and why it is down from $10,000.
Go ahead, Rep. Campbell.
I suppose I could answer that, since I was the main sponsor of H181. OPR had recommended considering dropping the $10,000 threshold because there were a lot of contracts in the under $10,000 sort of category that they were concerned about consumer fraud about, and of course that's what they're worried about. So where did $2,000 come from? It's an arbitrary number, frankly. I mean, any number is an arbitrary number, unless maybe we can do some research about what problems OPR or the AG's office has seen, and what those contract levels have been when they start to see problems. So that's where it came from. Nowhere in particular, but something to consider.
I had a similar question or a thought, Rep. Campbell, about whether we had, whether OPR or somebody or you guys could provide information about whether there is some particular price break at which we move beyond gig folks and get into, people who are contractors. You had mentioned, you worry about the negative impact on somebody having to register if they're just a gig worker. So what kind of impact? You fill out a form and you pay $75.
Sure. So I worry about say in the case of maybe a young person who is looking for a kind of side hustle opportunity for teaching or whatnot over the summer, if they're not aware of that requirement, and if there would be, say, an enforcement action taken against them for not registering, something like that is something.
Because it's not enforced.
Sure.
I mean, there is no compliance downside right now. It's Rep. Putnam?
I was gonna ask a similar question. Can we imagine a registration process and perhaps even what happens if they weren't aware of it and paint a thing that would not pose a hurdle? And I'm just thinking about, make the registration easy, and if it's $75, someone paints a house and they didn't do it, that the only thing required of them when they become aware of it, or someone becomes aware that they painted without registering, is that they register and pay their $75. If there's no punitive thing, it's just get everyone who's working on houses
Sure.
registered.
Yeah, maybe for it, just throwing an idea out there, lowering that registration cost from $75 to $35 or something. If it's between that $2,000 to $10,000 range, you know what I'm saying? Just to kind of right size and to offer some recognition of the fact that this is a pretty low bar in terms of the work that can be done within that range, particularly with the trend that we're seeing in materials costs being so expensive and only trending upwards these days.
I feel like I wonder if it isn't in those lower job ranges that you tend to find more of the kind of sort of fly by night back in pickup truck folks that were wanting to try to keep track of, or I don't know. Rep. Campbell knows a lot more about this than I do because he's remained involved, but I just remember all the original testimony about this and the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish here. And I never really bought the argument that this was punitive. Like, this is a consumer protection bill. Rep. Howland?
Well, until she mentioned painter, I never thought of the painter being involved in the energy effectiveness of the structure. So I thought the people that the bill would be referring to is the carpenter who forms the wall, the insulating contractor, maybe the interface, because the electrical and plumbing is going to infiltrate the insulation system. But I until she mentioned it, I never thought of a tiler, or a tile contractor, or a painter. And if you just want your bathroom painted or you want your kitchen painted, probably you just write up 5 gallons of paint and a little bit of time, you're into the about a $2,000-3,000
I think she's
incidental
testifying
contract.
specifically about the part of the bill that talks about that broader contractor registry that we've established. And the contractor registry that's in statute now is not limited to energy efficiency. It's a broad contractor registry we stood up a couple of years ago and is still kind of getting underway.
And I didn't think of that. I didn't think of that level.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, I think I might have confused the matter. I'm certainly thinking of this as also a building performance and quality of construction issue, but that's not the focus of OPR. OPR is focused on the consumer fraud issue, which doesn't have anything to do with building quality so much as whether a contractor is defrauding a consumer. And thinking of painting, if you dump a gallon of paint on an Oriental rug, that could be $10,000, right?
Do you assist your members in obtaining liability insurance for would a painting contractor be a member of your organization? And do you work with assisting them to find liability coverage?
Yes, I'm not intimately familiar with that. Probably, I have not been on the phone personally with a member, say for instance, who is and have walked them through that process. But that is something that we, just as a professional trade organization, help facilitate.
The witness that was before us with OPR quoted about $700 a year premium for a typical contractor. And after she left, I kind of thought in my own profession, it was a percentage of billing was the premium. And I happen to be a structural engineer. I've never had a building fall up. And it was 4% of billing, and there was about $4,000 minimum. So I haven't checked out such. And obviously, there's a lot of difference in the liability of a painter and the Oriental rug than there is the carpenter or somebody failing to insulate and seal properly. So I don't have any idea of what the premium might be for a contractor and whether it be the general contractor's liability, and so that the person that just has the summer gig might work under the general contractor's registry and not registered. So
I would just observe one paragraph in the OPR's status report about the building registry and why they recommended lowering the threshold, or actually maybe even doing away with the threshold. They say that the $10,000 jurisdictional threshold for registration creates a tolerance for misconduct based on a monetary value, which is unlike any other professional registration program under OPR jurisdiction. This threshold prevents OPR from removing bad actors from the market. Even if a contractor is found guilty of fraud, OPR can only prohibit that individual from selling services more than $10,000. So I think their point was that they didn't, as I mentioned earlier, did not set the $2,000 threshold. The reason why I included any threshold at all in H-181 was because I recalled the governor vetoing the bill originally, the original contractor registry bill, based on the threshold being too low. He suggested in his veto message that he might be able to support it if it was $10,000, and so we raised it to $10,000 when we put that language in the housing bill.
Representative, if I may, I will just say that in terms of the difference in the contractor registry and having that kind of monetary kick in or trigger, I would also just say that contracting is such a broad term and there's so much diversity in terms of what could qualify as a quote unquote contractor. And so I think it is the correct approach to have some level of a trigger as opposed to anyone doing contracting at all whatsoever. I mean, then I would say we might get into the situation where, am I a contractor? I go help my friend retile her bathroom, and she pays me with a 6-pack and a weekend of fun. Like I think that's the kind of difference with just the diversity in the industry that we see. And I do think that there should be some level of trigger as opposed to such a broad-based definition.
Yeah, good point.
All right. Thank you for joining us.
Anything else?
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Appreciate
I
it.
appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it. Do you guys want to just roll on?
they're here.
Okay, great. If you guys are ready, if not, we can take a little break.
We are ready. We're ready to walk.
Speak up. Okay, great. Thank you. Like a miracle.
I could hear Richard's laugh out in the hallway. I knew it was time.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Didn't know she did tie.
Thank you.
Is it ready?
No, I'm forgetting to elevate. I know, it's just removing that shit. Thank you.
Related to that, Rick?
You are. Yes, I don't.
All right.
Do you prefer that we share a screen? I'm seeing that you're getting this presentation.
Well,
In front of you, so
do people care one way or the other? I mean, I can see Scott better, honestly, for hand raising, if you don't share your screens, but do people want to see it on the screen?
Do the YouTubers get to see it if it's on the screen? So it's not.
I can't remember. Jack, do the people watching on YouTube, they don't see the testimony Do
It's
they see the
posted on,
testimony if we screen share? They do.
yes, they do, we share.
Well, maybe we should do that. Do you mind? We'll
So why
screen
not
share.
just
Okay,
one moment to sign into Zoom?
yeah. Stop, just wave your arms. If-
Either that or I'll just holler.
Okay. And then, after you have your materials shared, we'll have you introduce yourselves. Because I don't think you've been here before.
Right now.
Buckle your seatbelts.
I'm ready. I have spent time here in the State House before, but not here. A few years ago.
We have a lot of questions.
And can I just say, Rev Howland, yesterday you said something about from a layperson's point of view. It doesn't seem to me you're a layperson in any sphere of human knowledge.
Well, I did everything from deliver newspapers, mail. Did some carpentry when I was younger as a youth.
I deliver newspapers. It was a great job.
They won't let them do it anymore.
Do you want me to share before we introduce ourselves?
Yeah. Get up
Yeah,
before.
I'm ready for it. Every room's a little
The time
different.
limitation.
Go figure.
Trying to make sure I follow the
About one foreign kids don't do that. They won't allow. them.
And to this day, when I walk my dog, I toss newspapers up on the porch when I see they've been improperly delivered. My professional standards.
Broken any windows lately?
I never broke a window.
You never broke a window?
No, sir.
That's where I learned to glaze windows too. Yeah. Mrs. Goodrich. And I think I broke her window more than once. Because
Oh my
the
God.
paper was small enough that you could fold it in a square, and the newspaper was wider than they are, so they were a little wider, and you could fold it into a square, and
And you just went right through Miss Goodrich's window twice.
more than just Mrs. Goodrich's.
Okay, we are here today. We've already introduced ourselves and y'all are here. So, well, actually, you were not here. So I'm Representative Kathleen James from Manchester.
Richard Bailey, Lamoille 2. Chris Morrow, Wyndham, Windsor Bank. Michael Southworth, Caledonia 2.
Christopher Howland, Lucky 4.
Territory, Washington too.
Graham Klepner, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
Laura Similia, Wyndham too.
And behind you on the screen, Representative Scott Campbell from St. Johnsbury.
I'm behind the desk, Jack Locker, Committee Assistant.
All right, for the record, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us. For the record, Miranda Gray, I'm the Deputy Commissioner of the Economic Services Division, and we really appreciate you having us in today. And I'm thinking you'd like, Monica, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Hi, I'm Monica Medeiros. I am the Communications and Legislative Affairs Director for Economic Services.
Great, thank you.
And I'm Richard Giddings. I'm the Heating and Utility Assistance Program Director.
Super. All right,
So Richard is truly the expert here, and happy to, I heard you say that you had a lot of questions, so we're happy to walk through the slides and take questions if you have on the specific slides, or if you want to wait until then, whatever works for you, really works for us. And again, we appreciate you asking and to share about the program, and then also what we know federally.
great. Thank you.
You're gonna run that?
Yeah, I got
All
you.
right. It's fun to partner with Miranda on this. So the first slide that you're looking at actually is the likely funding and benefit stats. And I just want to explain a little bit to you just so it makes sense. We'll just do one of the state fiscal years. So for 2025, we anticipated getting $23.1 million in funds. There's a zero left out there. I missed that yesterday. And we had some carry forward money of 2.2 million. We add that back together. The carry forward money often is tied to refunds that people don't fully use. So we send out $1,000, but I only use 800. Have until April 30th to use it. If you don't use it, then those funds have to be sent back to the state, and then we roll it into next year's pot. That gives us then we also have our state funds, which is, you'll notice that number is always the same, 3.066. That's because we have a swap with weatherization, where we provide them with 3.066 of federal dollars, and they give us 3.066 of state dollars. And so it just always looks the same. It's 15% of our grant is what it works out to be. Even though our grant numbers change, they like to stick with a fixed number so they can manage within that number, which makes sense. And so that gives us a total for this year that we were anticipating having available of 28.372. You'll see the next number is a flat number, 17,000 households. That's what we had anticipated serving. It was down a little bit from last year, and we were anticipating potentially it would be down. On the next page, I'll show you the exact number. And then we figure out a price, what the benefit would be if we were to pay this. But let me skip that column first. I'll jump to where it says average cost of petrol per gallon. We take all of the consumption reports we get back from the dealers on each household. We put them into our system. We then add them up and then say, this is what the average cost for oil was. This is what the average cost for kerosene was. This is what the average cost for propane was. And then we come up with an average. This year, when we did that, there was a news article that said anticipate for federal fiscal year 25, which is what we're in, that price will be a little bit higher. So we added the 25 cents to that. And that's where we came up with that $4.23 per gallon as an average. The next column talks about how many gallons that 1,079 would buy and what percentage of purchasing power that is. So what a household, our program is not meant to pay 100% of anyone's heating assistance. It's meant to be a supplement. So in this situation, that 1,079 would buy 255 gallons or 33% of a household's heating liability. Okay. All right. And then if you just a couple more parts on this slide, just so you can see it, you'll see if you go to the total funds column, if you start dropping down, you're going to see where the years where we had CARES money or ARPA money, like we had $52 million at one stage in 2022. That was a lot of money. They gave us 15 months to spend that money in. So that year we paid out a much higher benefit, as you can see, 1893. But we also did some other things to try and help households with their electric benefit, or we did some additional work for how that year the price of kerosene was extremely high, almost $7 a gallon. And so we paid out a supplemental benefit to households that heated with kerosene. So this is just kind of we do this every year, and it's a status report, and we just kind of use it as our benchmark as a way to start.
Brett Bailey?
Okay, so who's sending you back the money that they don't use, the vendor?
Sure. Yeah. All of our benefit. Yes. All of our, you have to be a certified dealer to participate in our program. And what you get with that is that when we issue our benefits, you get a large amount of money up front. You then apply that as a credit to their account. And then when you're done at the end of the year, you have to provide us with consumption information. How many gallons, what was the price per gallon? And we look at not just the heating season, which is November through April, but we also look at the entire year because we use that to determine the energy burden for a household when we get their electric data. And it's one of the things we have to report to the Fed.
Brett Kleppner?
So it sounds like you are tailoring the benefit at the household level. Is that accurate?
Yes, there's a slide here that will talk about how we figure out the benefit. And we do exactly that. We look at several factors, including household income, where they fit into the percentage of poverty, and then issue that benefit accordingly. The household determines, though, like what their primary heat is. So I'll give an example. If I have an oil furnace in my house, but I also have a heat pump, they can choose to say, oh, I'm heating my house with my heat pump. We only pay one benefit for the source of heat that they determine because we don't have enough funds to pay like two. And our system access, which I don't know if you've ever heard of our access system, but it's been around a while. It's the eligibility system, and it doesn't have the ability to split benefits. Like I don't have the ability to say, oh, I'll send $800 here to the oil dealer and I'll send another $300 here.
Yeah.
We hope in our new eligibility system, which might be a few more years, it will have that ability, but right now it doesn't.
Yes, and if I can just ask for one preview in terms of the household eligibility, does the level of energy use factor in to the benefit they get, or is it purely household income?
It purely is household income, number of bedrooms, type of heating product, etc.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Rep Cam?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I have a question. How do you ensure that, so you upfront the money to the fuel dealer, the vendor, and then they send you a report at the end of the year saying, this is how much fuel we sold to this customer, and how much it cost, right?
Yep.
Yep. And so how do you ensure that that they're accurate, that those reports are accurate, that they're selling, that they're telling you the amount, the price of the fuel that they charge everyone else at that point in time.
Sure, we audit them. So we select dealers each year. We select clients off their list. And then we audit those. And when they do that, they need to send us their statements as well as their tickets, a copy of the ticket that they left at the person's household. And then we go through an audit. Our dealers have two choices to pick from to be a certified dealer. It's either margin over rack or discount off retail. Discount off retail stands for the dealer sets the price and they have to give our light heap household a 15-cent discount off of whatever that price is. Margin over rack, we set the price every day, and we set that price by getting 4 hub averages. We get an email every single day, and we take the averages of that, and then we post that to our website. So it's posted every day by 12 noon. So dealers that are margin over rack have the ability to go in and look and say, this is the price of oil for tomorrow. Always one day ahead. And that's what they can charge. And so if we find out that someone like, say, charge 10 cents more, then when we audit the case, we then look at it, and then we make them aware of it. And then we often, if we find one, and they're very good at this, if we find one, we'll often go back and say, we need to look at more. So we want to make sure that you corrected these, but we want to look at more. We want to make sure they're all done. And they are very good about wanting to make sure they get it right as well.
So you find compliance with the requirements is good.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, once in a while, someone has a math mistake or something in there, but it's not like I've been in this role now for 7 years. We've never had a dealer just get it completely wrong. Like if someone has one out of those cases we select wrong, then we say, okay, well, we're going to look at another 5 or 10 cases and take a peek to see how those look. And they're very good. They're like, okay, we want to make sure it's right.
Yeah. Just looking for waste, fraud, and abuse. That's all.
Yep.
I just wanted to make sure that I'm understanding. So it looks like setting aside the pandemic years, it looks like in your average year, it's about 3 million in state funding, and then the balance is all federal.
Correct.
Okay.
But yeah, it's mostly completely funded with federal dollars. You'll see the 3 million listed there, but it's really a swap is what we're doing with that. We can give up to 15% of our light heat block grant to weatherization. If you give more than that, then you have to get a waiver. So we give the 15%, and then exchange, they give us back 15%, the exact amount. And that's so that it's so that it supports our staffing. So I'll show you in the next slide, but we do year-round eligibility. And as part of that, the cost of having staff process applications year-round is more than what we are allowed of the 10% max. Okay.
As I recall, this fuel swap had to do with enabling the state to draw down more money. I forget whether it was on the light heap side or on the WAP side, but one side or the other, it allowed one program to draw down some more federal money.
That's correct. The WAP side, they're able to use that money to match other pots of money and draw down.
Yeah.
Rep. Allen?
So the recipient in year 2025 covers about 33% of his need. And is he's responsible for the remainder of that at time of delivery? And
Sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
at time of delivery, or maybe extended a credit.
That's right. Most dealers will say, hey, I put $600 in, you had a $200 credit still remaining, so you will now, $400.
So my real question is that the person has to pay $400 to top up for weather day, $400, but he only has 200. And so his percentage, he's not getting a delivery of my fuel dealer. It's 125 a drop. If it's less than that, I'm going to pay an additional fee. But
Our dealers don't charge.
dealers can't
Yeah,
charge. They can't recoup their cost if they drop less, if their labor cost to deliver that particular load or
yeah.
outside the
Our
norm.
dealers actually don't drop less. They're very good. They really have an idea of how much the tank will hold. And I think some of it is because, right, you tend to have a certified dealer and they're the only ones that put product in your tank. Otherwise it has to be inspected if you're using someone else. But our dealers really have a good census. Once in a while, like someone will come in for crisis assistance and they'll say, oh, I think I'm out of fuel. And then the dealer goes to make a delivery and the tank only holds 50 gallons. The dealer then reaches back out to the community action agency and makes us aware of it. And then we have a conversation with the client about the need to make sure you're checking because, that's really it wasn't an emergency.
I was looking at the customer who didn't have that money to pay for that. His portion's 400 of the $600 drop. So he says, I only have 200. So he drops below that 125.
Yeah, our dealers really are very good about not. And even near the end of the season, what they end up saying often is that you've got a credit of 200, but it's going to cost 400. You got to come up with the other 200 or put a payment arrangement together with us now. And, I try to, like when some of the folks have called me, I say, you're still getting $200 worth of product and you're going to need that other 200 no matter what. So this is a good time to figure out how can you come up with this or how are you going to set up a payment arrangement to be able to afford that. I promise not to take that much time on each slide. I promise. This is good though.
Good.
So the next slide that we're looking at really talks about what we paid for with our LIHEAP federal dollars. Heating assistance, crisis assistance, weatherization, furnace repair and replacement, and fuel tank repair and replacement. And, people think like, well, why would you do some of those things? Well, some of it is because if we give you a heating product, but your furnace isn't running, not really helping you. And the same thing is true, whether it's a tank, a yellow tag tank, right? They could use it through the end of April. Now we're May. So we have a lot of requests right now for fuel tanks to be replaced. And we partner with the Department of Environmental Conservation around that. We give them some funds out of the LIHEAP budget for them to also use to help replace some tanks for low income Vermonters.
Sorry. Low income Vermonter who needs a tank replaced. How much of that cost do they get covered with you and
well, we give
NRC and
we give DEC 75,000, and then what they do is they replace them. I don't know the exact cost of one, but I'm going to say between 2,000 and 3,000, right? And so that only gets really utilized for 25 to or more households. And then what they do is they send me a list. I review the list and determine these folks were eligible for heating assistance. And if they're eligible, then it's covered out of like basically our pot of money up to that 75,000.
And is that typical demand in the state for new tanks?
There's a significant demand for tanks. They have other pots of money because our money doesn't really come until the beginning of a federal fiscal year. So often they like to do the work really in the summer. Like if someone needs to have a tank replaced right now, this is the time to do it because it's not crisis season, right? So yes, they do use it, and then they will do a MOU and we just share invoices and check.
Yeah, I feel like when we had A&R in here, they also, for these customers will give them the choice of a heat pump. Does that happen? Or?
Not through our program. We don't.
Okay, so
I mean,
if
if you have a failed system and weatherization goes in the home and they're like, oh, this system's not working. They do talk with folks about the options that they have. The challenge, I think, that I would say is that heat pumps are great. A couple of years ago, we had kind of a mild winter. I think they would work through a winter like that. This year, when we hit February, for our friends that have heat pumps, I don't know that they work super well yet. There's cold climate heat pumps, and they're getting better every year. They really are. But when you start getting below zero, our friends have one and they're like, so, we have 3 heat pumps and, we could get it to 52. So we just had to put some extra sweaters and stuff on and that was good. But for our folks, I'm not sure that if you're replacing a system and they will get better, I think we will see the day when they can handle 20 below. But they're not quite there yet. And I'm not an expert on heat pumps. I don't have one. But I do think that they continue to get better every year. So just looking at the income guidelines, because I feel like I'm a little slow here. On one side, you'll see the left-hand side, you'll see the 185%, and that's for seasonal fuel benefits, gross income. So a household of 4 that has gross income of less than $4,956, they are eligible for a seasonal fuel benefit. On the other side, of course, is crisis fuel, which is administered through our 5 community action agencies. We apply for a block grant every year. We have a public hearing. we gather feedback and input into that, and then we submit our application. The application has to be in before September 1st, so that the feds have time to review it and then approve you. If you are not approved, you do not get any funding.
And Department of Energy, Department of Ag, who does the
Well,
application? go to?
it was the Department of Energy assistance, but that was eliminated. So it's still within the agency administration for children and families. And we just don't know like which division they put us, because they went from 28 to 15. So we don't know which one we're under. But we're there still.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now you'll see the actual numbers for this year. So it, as I mentioned, usually at the beginning of the federal fiscal year is 10/1. And on 10/1, it takes them about 30 days to get us out our notice, our letter of award. And then once we get our letter, we have cases, because we do year-round eligibility, all queued up and ready to go. So, you know, if you apply in April and I find you eligible, I say, yes, Richard, you're eligible. And then I send you that letter. And then when we issue the benefits in November, we send you a second letter that says, this is how much you're eligible for. Because we have to look at our total block grant and then how many households are active at that time. So I included some numbers here. We serve 16,296 households in federal fiscal year 25, which just finished, right? Well, it didn't finish yet, but for our heating season it did. And then we had another 1,407 of heated renters. Heated renters are households that have unsubsidized housing, but heat is included in the rent. They get a smaller benefit. And then there's another 22,498 households that get a fixed benefit. So that's a $21 benefit. And that's for roomers. That's for housing subsidy cases where heat is included in the rent. So I 30% of my income goes towards my housing rent, but I also get heat included in that. So they get a $21 benefit. And then the one that you're probably most familiar with is our heat and eat households. That's the one where we pay a $21 benefit, and that maximizes SNAP households. Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, pretty good. So remember that. And that allows them to get the full standard utility allowance to maximize their 3 squares benefit.
The block grant at the federal level, that's just a calculation, I assume, right? Like they just crunch the numbers and determine how much we're eligible for, or no?
It should be an answer of yes. There was one person that did all that work, and of course they let him go. And then when they realized that they needed him, they brought him back for 30 days so he could train some other folks on how they come up with it. It's 2 different calculations. They use an old part of the system and the new part of the system. So it's not really straightforward as much. I mean, I know the percentage I use when we get told that funding is coming out. I use 0.0056%. 0.0056%. That's how I try to ballpark what I think we're going to see, you know, depending on how much is in the lively pop.
Federally.
Correct.
Yeah, Merle?
I'm curious about the people who have, the renters who have heat already included in their rent.
Yeah. Subsidized or unsubsidized?
Well, either one. Like
Okay, so let's talk about
it's already, yeah. Go
so the unsubsidized ones, right? I'm renting a place across the street. It's $1,200 a month, but the heat's included. We still provide them with a benefit because they still have to pay for electric. So although they're getting their heat included, there's other expenses to run that furnace off, and it's electric to run the furnace. So we pay them. You can see the benefit average was $221. So if you think $221 over 6 months, it's really about, you know, not even $40 a month. And then for the subsidized households, that right. So my rent is 30% of that $1,200, so I pay $400. That's my share of it. The rest comes out of a different pot of money, and my heat's included and my utilities are included. We pay them $21. And that's to ensure that they can maximize, they get $21, which allows them to still maximize the SNAP benefit.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't quite get the unsubsidized one. So is it only if it's electric?
No, but most people only, like here in Vermont, most people only have electric that is paying them. So anyone who actually has
Wait. Yep. They only have electric that is what?
that they're paying for.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not, they're not paying for any heat. It could be propane, oil, kerosene, it could be anything.
Yep.
But they need something to run that. So if they have to pay for like that portion of it, the electric to run their furnace, or
Oh, I
their
see.
blower, or their hot, you know, that, we then provide that benefit.
So is it just a flat benefit or is there some measurement of
It's
need? Or-
30, yeah, there's a whole calculation we go through, and then they get 30% of what their benefit would be. So if I'm eligible for, $300, I get 30%, I get $100. The average was 221, but.
Okay.
Okay,
Could I please-
yeah,
So back on the first slide, the under 2024, it said special electric benefit of $340 per household.
Yep.
Not included in the average benefit. Is that the unsubsidized?
no, that was where we had some extra funds. And we
Oh.
provided a $340 benefit to all households that were active Stephen,
And that was just in 2024.
just in 2024.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Next slide just talks about we determine eligibility. Beginning March 1st is when the new income guidelines go into place. The income guidelines are on the last page. And we do the two-step process, the one I mentioned where I send you a letter saying you've been found eligible, and I send you a second letter where we determine what that benefit amount is. The factors that we look at when we determine that is we look at if you pay for heat or if it's including your rent. We look at what type of housing you live in, single home, duplex, apartment building, multifamily, how many bedrooms you have. We look at the type of fuel that you heat with because each heating product pays a different amount. We have a benefits matrix that is part of this calculation. We look at if the housing is subsidized, and then we take your household income and we plug that into a chart, and then we start doing the calculations. And what's great is this old access system that I talked about. It is very accurate with this stuff. And so it determines your benefit amount. Once that run takes place, usually on about the middle of November, we issue on that night last year, I think it was just under $13 million overnight. All those are done through ACH payments to dealers' banks. So I'm Irving Oil and I just got X into my bank account. And then we give them a list the next day and say, here's where all those funds need to be credited to. And then they start the process of putting them on people's accounts. At the same time, we then mail the letters out to our clients saying, you've been found eligible and this is how much you're eligible for. Some other tidbits of I just thought find this interesting. I like this. 22% of our folks own their home. Another 50% pay rent and pay for utilities separately. So they're not just paying the rent amount, they're paying for their heat, they're paying for the electric, they're paying in some situations water, they're paying for that. And then 28% of them have utilities included in their rent. And then I did the heating products next because I just wanted folks to be aware of what the majority of our folks have. Only 5% have electricity, but you can see 38% have oil. Next is followed by propane at 19 and then kerosene. So our big three, when we're determining those benefits, we're really looking at 11,000 of our households use the majority of the big benefit types. Coal. Yeah, we have 3 households that still get coal.
So you're buying coal?
We do. Yeah. I shouldn't say we have a couple of dealers that still sell coal.
Yeah.
And then we refer, like when people are found eligible, they know who their coal dealer is because I don't think anybody puts coal furnaces in anymore, but they always on my list for when we provide a report to OEO, looking at where they can do weatherization or if they have funding available, furnace replacements. They're always on my list because I still find it hard to believe. We had 4 last year. We only have 3 now. Someone got a new furnace or a new heating system over the year.
It's especially 25% decrease in 1 year. That's
In
pretty
1
good.
year, that's right.
Are they all in one geographic location?
They are not. We had one down by us. There was Weldon Coal. I live in Brandon. So we had Weldon Coal in town and they were trying to get rid of all their excess coal. So they called me up and said, could you use 60 tons of it? I'm like, no. I mean, so we tried to connect them with some of the other dealers, but I think in the end, they just had to remove it. So.
Do you know how many coal dealers there are left in Vermont?
I think we have 3. And I think they're really on the extremes. I think it's the edge of New York, the upstate, like St. Johnsbury area. And maybe there might be one in where?
East Montpelier.
East Montpelier. See? Knew Matt would know.
We have three, and they each have one customer.
Now,
Well, they have many customers. I think that for us, these are only three receive a heating assistance benefit. Madam Chair.
Are we gonna get deep into coal? Cause I want to stay on.
just for 1 minute.
Okay, like 1 minute.
One more
Okay.
question. Can I ask it to Matt about how many coal heaters, how many coal?
Sure, and then we're coming back around to
All right.
why he, okay.
Burn coal in Vermont?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a number of questions.
Well, that was an easy question.
Yeah.
All right. So the next part I'm going to talk about.
Wait, what was the answer? That's it.
He's gonna let us know.
have nothing.
Oh, okay.
So the next part is really about the other programs that we do. So crisis fuel assistance. Many years ago, Commissioner Brown made a decision that he wanted to put as much money up front out the door to our dealers and for our clients to be able to determine who their dealer would be and where they're going to get their benefit. So we try not to spend a lot of money on crisis assistance, even though we still do. So our 5 community action agencies do a great job. They assisted 2,989 households in federal fiscal year 24, because I don't have the numbers quite yet for 25. And of that group, 2,400 or 84% were 150% of poverty or less. So these are folks that get their benefit, they use their benefit, they have no more benefit, and they still need more heating assistance. They can then go in and apply at a community action agency for what we call a crisis assist. Furnace repair and replacement in federal fiscal year 24, we did 423. Sometimes it's as easy as a repair. Sometimes it's truly as a replacement, and those replacements range in cost. And then,
I'm just wondering, is that, whether they're the renter or the owner?
If someone's renting the place and the furnace dies, it's really the owner's responsibility to replace it. It's not the renter.
These are people that,
These are people that
I
own.
guess, 22%.
Correct. Yes, good question. And the same thing is,
And that crisis money comes out of your LIHEAP
yes, it does.
pile of dollars?
Yeah. About 6% is what we use.
Okay.
Fuel tank repair and replacement, same thing. Tanks get inspected. They have to be inspected. If someone's tank needs to be replaced, we want to assist if we can. Like I mentioned earlier, we do partner with the DEC on that. But we know that we sometimes have households. This year we had a lot of households that had yellow tags, which allowed for them to still get their product in their tank for this year, but they can't get a product in their tank. So right now, like I've had like 3 requests in the last day. I'm like, yeah, let's get you over to DEC and let's get that form filled out, and let's get that going now in the summer.
Curious, do you ever work with the fuel dealers on locking in rates for customers for the winter, or how does that work?
Because a customer can certainly choose to lock in a price. If that's what they want to do, they can choose that. And that's outside of the 2 options that we offer. So if you and I are negotiating and I say I'll give it to you for $1.97, a customer wants to lock that in, that's fine. But the majority of our folks don't really have that as an option. They don't choose that as an option because they're not sure. They know that what we're paying won't pay for the whole thing, and they're not sure how much more they're going to need. So we don't have, I have a couple I know that came up this year where dealers they honored it, right? They locked in, and they maybe locked a little low, and so the dealer ate a little bit on that, but it's not very often. You're welcome. And as I mentioned, for weatherization, we do provide roughly 15%, $3,003,066 to them to help with weatherization of low-income Vermonters. And we do also provide them with a list of folks that have received fuel assistance each year, so that they can reach out directly to these folks. If you apply for seasonal fuel, you are automatically eligible for weatherization services. Even if you don't want the whole hit and caboodle, they could still come in and do a heat assessment, and take a look at, where the energy is going and what things could we do that would help. So we do have a lot of folks that take advantage of that.
Yeah.
So if I get $1,000 benefit from you and you send it to my fuel oil dealer, he puts that on my account. And do you have any issues when I see my credit and I haven't used it up, saying, well, gee, that's my money, why are you getting taken it away? Do you have any of those issues?
No, dealers are very good. It's written in their agreement with us that they can't provide the money that we give them to the client. they can transfer to another certified dealer, right? If all of a sudden I'm switching dealers, but nobody ever says, oh, I need that money back. In my 7 years here, I've not had somebody say, oh, that's my money. It's not, it's federal money.
Okay,
And so we get it
so
back.
it doesn't get applied directly to my account. They,
No, it does. It goes on your account, but they make a note. It usually says LIHEAP dollars.
okay,
And then like whatever's over at the end of April, they're then returning that amount to us.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, refund and consumption reports. So we have our reports. They will go out this week to our roughly 160 certified dealers, and we give them about 6 weeks to complete them because some are very large and some, are smaller. But we give them enough time to complete them and to provide us with that information related to gallons purchased and cost during the heating season as well as for an entire year. When they send it back to us, we review it. I love Excel. Excel is my friend. We go through it, a whole formula. We find out if we have discrepancies. We talk with them about those discrepancies. We have to make sure we agree on it. And then at that stage, they then cut a check and send it back to us. It comes into our shop. We then have to put it on transmittal and then I return it to the business office and account for each and every single one of them. The fuel season also right now is shifting into audit season for us. So we have major audits that we do. We have our certified dealers that we do. We have our wooden pellet households that we do, because for wooden pellet households, we don't issue that benefit to a certified dealer. We issue it directly to the client. So if you're eligible for $1,000, I send it to you and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to need to see some receipts for the wooden pellet that you purchased. And if they don't have receipts, oh, I didn't save any, or oh, I didn't, then you're automatically audited again the next year. We do certainly want to make sure that, people, at one point there was a major conversation about trying to have certified dealers, but like I'm a farm boy, right? I mean, I milk cows in the morning, milk cows at night. I have wood up there. I don't need, like, if you sent me a benefit, what would I use it for? Because I can just go cut wood on my own land. So we really try hard to make sure that people that are purchasing it, when they do ask us sometimes, do you know anyone that sells wood? And I say, oh, look at Craigslist. Craigslist always has a list of people that are selling, or talk to your neighbor. But we do audit those cases, and we do ensure that people are providing us with the receipts for that. And then the last one is our crisis fuel programs. We audit them as well. So the same thing happens with them. We reach out to them. We say, here are the cases we want to look at. And then we make sure they send us the application, the documentation of how they found the person eligible, the documentation of when that bill was paid, whether it was through an invoice and then they paid the invoice, because we want to just make sure that we're accounting for the dollars that come into the state. All right, last slide. And then questions if you have more. So on March 27th, Health and Human Services announced a reduction of 10,000 more staff, and that's when they also announced they were going from 28 divisions to 15. We don't know exactly what our division is yet. I'm sure we'll find out soon, but we don't know yet. It was the Department of Energy Assistance, and it will be someone else. The LIHEAP program itself was not eliminated. Only Congress can do that. So although Secretary Kennedy can reorganize, he can't eliminate us. So Congress has always supported LIHEAP for 45 years. It's been supported by bipartisanship, because although here in Vermont it's heating assistance, in Texas it's cooling assistance, or in Arizona, it is really much supported across the country. So we're looking ahead at federal fiscal year 26. We don't know. We know in our draft budget that he provided, that I think it said that it was leaked out, but that was provided. That draft budget showed LIHEAP at 0, but it was the same thing when he was in office the first 4 years. He put 0 in for the budget, and Congress always approved money for LIHEAP. And then those 4 years, they also gave us a slight increase. So I don't know that will happen now, different times, but we will have to wait and see, how this kind of plays out. All I know is that the messaging that I've been trying to give to Vermonters that call and reporters that call is we're still here to serve Vermonters with their heating needs, and we'll have to figure out what that looks like as we learn more.
Well, yeah, Rep Morrow.
So when you get the dollar amount, once it's in the fall, you just get a lump sum from the feds, and then you don't have to deal with them the rest of the year?
No. So you would get that if they could pass in a full year's worth of a budget, but they don't. It's the CR. So we get 90% funding upfront. And we don't get it all. We draw it down basically. So, but as we spend it, like when we spent that 14 million, we can draw it down the same week. And we've been able to continue to draw down now, even through the new administration, because we had our first award letter. We've been told there is more money coming. I did get a copy of a notice today saying the remaining amount of your money will be released. So at least I know it's in the works. We spend as if we have 100% of the funds. We don't do 90% and then say, oh, now we got 10% more. How are we going to spend that? Because we only issue one benefit a year. That's all our system can really handle. Our system's not only can it not split benefits, it can't issue without some magic work behind the scenes, 2 benefits.
How?
Oh, the access system.
Oh,
How old is it?
Oh, how old?
Yeah.
Well, I've worked for the state 40 years this year, and it's been around all of that. So I'm going to say probably closer to 50.
Wow.
It's the same one that DMV was using. I think they just got a recent upgrade and some others. So yeah, OCS was using a few of us.
Thank you for your service.
Here, yeah, I like what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Rep Torrey?
Back to that first slide.
Yeah.
So are you seeing a reduced demand? Because I noticed, we were at 19.7 back in 2019, now you're at 17.
Excellent question. No, I don't know that it's so much less demand. I think there's been my opinion, due to some housing challenges, people have doubled up. So if you live in the same household and we combine you as one, you don't get 2 separate heating benefits. So I think what we have seen is some people previously who had their own housing, but they couldn't afford it. So now I've moved in over here, and so we're sharing a house, and now we just put our income together, and although our house size is doubled, we then now look at, what will our benefit be? So there's been some of that. We know that, we put some new rules into place, trying to really clarify things, and we think that has helped. One of the things that I think a lot of folks were unsure of is, could I get a benefit if I went to Florida each winter? And so we clarified that rule that if you are going to receive a heating assistance benefit, you need to be here 150 of the 180 days. That's that 6-month window, November through April. Otherwise, you're not eligible for it. We should not be heating homes if somebody's not here. So some of that is just, I think, kind of shrunk down. They often refer to themselves as the snowbirds.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So you're not having trouble meeting demand?
No, because we get one block grant, we wait to see how many households, but a couple of years ago when we had the ARPA money, we had more households apply. The best example I can think of is when my mom was still alive, she would say somebody else needs that way more than I do, right? Because you can just go up and cut some more wood for me in the, in the field and bring that down. And so somebody else could probably use that. So she never applied, even though, clearly I handed her income. She would have clearly been eligible. But I think that's in many ways the Vermont way, right? Somebody always thinks somebody else needs it more.
And when you got the ARPA money, a bunch of people also lost their jobs and needed it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. And that's why I think we had a slight uptick there because people needed more help at that time.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Back on the page 3, this is the household number. This is the grant you give them, that amount, the 2412.
I'm just trying to see. No.
Fair.
Oh, no. That's the income guideline. So if a household comes and applies, let me just turn to that page here. At the top, yes. Oh, 2412. So if you apply and your household income is more than 2,412, then you're not eligible. You're over income for seasonal fuel. Now, monthly, correct.
This is a monthly.
Yeah, sorry.
Yep.
Should put that in. Yeah.
I wonder where the people are getting their Florida vacations for 2 months if they only have this income.
Well, some people have family, so sometimes they go south and stay with family.
Oh, okay, all right. So
Right. So if I don't have to pay and I can just crash on your couch or
children pay for parents to go to Florida. It's not.
sometimes it's like my brother has a place down there and I just go stay with him.
Okay.
What, can you speculate on the impact of the cuts to the Department of Energy assistance? And just like how much back and forth do you have with the people in the department that is going to be compromised going forward?
It's challenging. You know, they gave us a general email box to use now, right? Versus I had a relationship previously with our person. You know, someone I could call up and say, hey, I'm filling out this rental report and this is a new question. So I just want to make sure before I answer this, what exactly are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Just to make sure we're talking, you know, apples to apples and not apples to oranges. But I still, some of the people that they recently reassigned were people that worked there before, moved on to other jobs, and then they came back. And they're great folks. I mean, they're people that I was sad when I heard that they, you know, had left. Like, oh, that's too bad. She was outstanding. Like she would, you know, talk to you and tell, but I get it, like a promotion, good for her. But she's back now. So I think all these things will just take some time. I do think one of the challenges we see is that there may be some delays in them responding to us because there's a lot of new people. There's people that have never worked in lighting before. You know, we saw a list of 7 people and 2 I recognized. The other 5 I didn't. But before there was almost 20 staff in that unit. So not only have they downsized, some are new. We'll figure it out.
Could you reiterate on the yellow tag tanks?
I love having an expert here in the room with us. So this year, dealers were allowed to put a yellow tag on a tank, which allowed for them to continue to fill that tank. And then as of April 30th, is that right, Matt? May 1st. What, May 1st? Today, sorry, jumped up one day ahead. As of May 1st, the dealer could no longer put product in that tank. And before next heating season, they would need to get that tank replaced or up to code, right? Yeah, listen to Matt.
But that repair costs are no longer available in federal 25 and you were waiting there, maybe waiting for.
No, they're still available.
Funds available.
Correct.
To.
Yeah, DEC does it year round through their program. And then the funds that we have that we give them, they can use them year round. They have up until 9/30, and then that's the beginning of our next federal fiscal year. They always spend the money we give them.
No, it was the federal year versus state
Yes,
year that
yes.
I was confused about.
Yeah, just one last question. So in terms of, how many FTEs does it take to do these services to homeless?
Eligibility or my unit, my staff?
Oh, yeah.
I'll let Deputy Commissioner take a shot at that.
Oh, is it the test of how many, because your unit oversees more than just.
Yeah, that's what I
yeah.
was thinking. You probably don't
Yeah.
just do like.
They don't. No, they have a couple of programs they oversee, but we have a unit of, I'm gonna get it right, 6 in Central Office.
Oh, I didn't mean that. So I gotta answer my question. I thought you were talking eligibility. So there's about 130 eligibility staff
I could've
across
done
the
that.
state
Oh,
that determine eligibility year round.
it's for SNAP, TANF.
They're combined.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't want to say the wrong number.
So we couldn't.
I'm sorry. And then yes, my unit does. I have 2 eligibility staff that do a program called the Energy Assistance Program, which is with Vermont Gas, Green Mountain Power, Washington Electric, and Vermont Electric. We have some other folks that would like us to do some eligibility work for them, and that's so they can apply a discount to the monthly bill for households. And then I have 3 other staff that work for me that love these odds. They really like it when we get to odd season.
So in the Green Mountain Power rate structure, people of financial need get billed 75 cents on the kilowatt hour ratepayer. Does that other 25% come out of your funds? Is Green Mountain Power made whole? Or?
It does not. Green Mountain Power for the Energy Assistance Program, the money that they put towards that program is all paid for by ratepayers.
Is all paid for by the meter charge or whatever.
Yeah, I if you look at a bill, I did look at one a couple weeks ago and I did see it on there. You know, but everybody contributes to that bill, and then they use those funds to pay. And sometimes they're flush with funds, and then sometimes because the one thing about Green Mountain Power, they also had a program that would help people that had large back bill. So if I had a $3,000 electric bill, and as a Green Mountain Power customer, they had a forgiveness portion to that bill that they would forgive that $3,000 back bill as long as we got you on the program and you stayed current. which is great, but she only couldn't use it once. If you're eligible, they're 185% of poverty, so they're in line with our same program. That's why we do the eligibility component for them.
So that your federal dollars come from, you say, Agency of Human Services?
Agency for
No.
Children and Families, ACF. It was HHS, and then the Department of, yeah.
Okay, not Department of Energy.
No.
Okay.
Okay,
That's
everybody? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
great.
learned a lot.
Very helpful.
I like to talk about this stuff.
Yeah,
We really appreciate the opportunity.
yeah, thank you
having
so
me.
much. Yeah, for coming in.
Thank
Well,
you.
worried about the impact of the staffing cuts, but it sounds like for now anyway, the funding is not imminently threatened.
And we will continue to monitor that closely, and if something changes, in particular before the session ends, but even if out of session, then we would certainly communicate that. But we're hoping and, just that we won't see significant changes.
We're optimistic. Optimistic.
There we go.
All gonna get figured out.
All right. All right. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks,
And
folks.
Jack, we can go off live.